Talk about the wide receivers room, and this is a list, Talkie. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, this is where you get to 2 columns, and
barely could fit that in.
This looks like our coaching draft.
Yeah. And so, again, some of these freshmen here, even like Malachi Coleman, who's in Lincoln right now, but not at the university. So not all these guys are going to be going through spring practices. But let's start up on top here. Joshua Fleeks, the senior, he's the transfer from started off at Baylor with Coach Rule 4 or 5 years ago. 5'10", 190. Billy Kemp, the senior, 5'9", 180. He's the transfer from Virginia. A lot of good things that we'll get to him about. Marcus Washington, and we saw him have flashes last year. Senior, 6'2", 190. He's a transfer from Texas a year ago. Isaiah Garcia-Castaneda, he's back. So I've got to say the words again. I kept screwing up his name all IGC. He's back. Junior, 6 feet, 185. Tommy Hill, junior, 6 feet, 200. He's been a defensive back. He's been on offense.
Did they move him back, Honky? I thought he was going back to the
You know
DBs.
what? I think I updated the graphic and it didn't get updated here because you're right. I heard that he went back to defense. So I think this graphic is old there. Zavier Betts, another guy that's now back on the team, sophomore, 6'2", 200. Shawn Hardy, the second, sophomore, 6'3", 190. Janiran Bonner, redshirt freshman, 6'3". And, of course, I've got the logo up there, so let me take that off.
We'll say he's 400. And, no, he's only
400 pounds. Victor Jones, 6'1", 195. I'm going to stick with those guys there.
They're going to put him at tight end.
Yeah. Victor Jones. And we'll end with that because the rest are all going to be freshman guys. These guys, they're the ones that are probably going to get the bulk of the reps, any of the returning guys that at least here in spring. So, starting with Kemp, I think Kemp is such a game changer here. I mean, he comes here from Virginia and he's like number 3 or 4, whatever, on their all-time receiving list. I mean, he has, a ton of stats that have already come out of, playing in the ACC now for 3 seasons. Had a chance was thinking about it going pro, and then was granted a kind of a waiver. And all the Virginia players they were on the team that had the last season, the last couple games cut short because of the players that were shot and killed on their team. So they ended up having, waiver, and he had an opportunity instead of going into the draft to go into the transfer portal. And that's why he's coming here for one more season. He also, from a special team standpoint, is a returner. But I mean, I think from a possession receiver standpoint, this guy has an opportunity he could be the leading receiver on the team next year. I mean, that's the kind of role that
catches,
he has. Yeah. Not necessarily a guy that's going to stretch the field and be a burner, but somebody that's just going to make a lot of catches.
Yeah, someone who's going to move the chains, very reliable, someone that the quarterbacks are going to trust. But we've seen, Marcus Washington, like to your point, has shown some flashes to be another type of wide receiver 1. Interesting to see what Fleeks actually does here. It seems like this is just a new lease on life for him. And IGC started red hot last year, and obviously something happened there between him and the coaching staff and all that type of stuff. And then, of course, you've got Zavier Betts back on the team, and that could be the guy that does stretch the field, right?
Yeah. Today on Husker Online, they had posted something about what they had heard with Betts, that he's up to like 208 pounds. I think he'd gain 18 pounds and is faster than he's ever been. So, has had a really good offseason with that. And, look, it's never been an athletic issue with Betts. That's never been the problem. And so if, it's all about all the other things that they've talked about this offseason being with someone like Betts, is that making sure that are you bought in? Are you all into football? And if you are, holy smokes. I mean, that guy, we've seen glimpses of what that guy can do too. Marcus Washington, like you mentioned last year, I mean, there were times where, he was able to kind of take over a game for us, and he had opposite him, he had Palmer. So that's going to be the challenge for him next year is, maybe he is the number 1 guy next year. Maybe he takes over Palmer's role and has a guy like Kemp opposite him, getting some catches too. I don't know. IGC, we saw him for one game, against Northwestern, really have just an outstanding game, caught the first touchdown pass of the season. And then, 3 games later, he was quitting it. So I don't know what to make out of him yet. I think it's way too it's early for me to I'm just not sure what stock to put into him yet.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Rob, looking on the other side of the screen here on the second column, obviously Coleman kind of stands out there, someone that could be an early contributor. Is there anyone else out there that you're looking at that you'd like to see catching a few balls this year?
I think the one name, if I recall, and I'm trying to remember from looking at this, and I think Jayden Doss was the one kid that I think that they have coming in. Again, it's so hard to tell. Like, I don't even know if Coleman's going to contribute this year. Maybe he will, but I think it was between like him and Doss. Am I? God, I'm so bad at this with these because all these names.
That's all right. Doss is the one from the KC area, I think. Right?
Yeah, and I think that was the
one from Lincoln High.
Yeah, I believe that it was Doss was the one that they were talking about could come in, and that he was kind of like a last minute. They were really surprised that he signed with the team. I think that was him.
No.
Who am I?
Not right.
No, he's been around for a while, but.
Oh, he's been around. I'm sorry. I'm just trying to remember all these kids because
that's all right. The point is, I guess, Rob, is I think you've actually illustrated my point pretty well. Is that we're probably not expecting a lot from the freshmen outside of probably Malachi Coleman, who may be an early contributor, but a lot of these other guys are probably going to need a little bit of seasoning before they contribute, right?
I did have a question on Coleman though, because I know that we said like he's not on campus. Obviously, he's in Lincoln. But is he still able to go over and like work out at all, anything, because he's not enrolled yet, or is he because he's still in high school, like, or is he allowed to like go and be in the gym and be around the teammates? What are the rules on that?
You could go to practices, you can watch practices, things like that. At this point, he's not a recruit anymore, so
yeah,
he could be around as much as he can be around. Now,
like, what about like weight room and stuff? Because I swear I saw him in a weight room video, but I don't know that they. Him. Like,
I think when it comes to like things like that, the coaches can send them like weight lifting plans and food plans and stuff. But I don't think you're doing anything official until you're actually on campus enrolled and everything. So this gets into some of the weeds of the details there. But as far as like when I look at that right column and specifically the true freshman guys. Coleman, he definitely brings a different body type and everything than what we have right now. I mean, he's a big, tall, mismatched, fast kid. Now, Jaylen Lloyd and Brice Turner, those two guys are track guys, but they are probably development guys. So they would be examples of, it's going to be probably a year or two, most likely, before you'd start seeing them really contribute. And they might be contributing in ways on special teams before they would even on the offense. Janiran Bonner he's a really interesting guy for me. So he is the bigger body guy. He's 6'3" and 200 there, but he's the kid from was it Georgia last year, I think, and or was it Louisiana? I can't remember, but it was where Joseph got him right at the very end. Big 4-star, recruit. And so, he's redshirted, he's back now. And a lot of people probably thought that he was going to take off when Joseph wasn't here anymore. And the fact that he's still here going through spring ball, it'll be interesting to see, if he's able to start getting his, himself into some of the different sets and some of the positions there. So there's size, there's speed. It's a deep room. There's some experience there. I mean, Kemp and Washington and Betts. I mean, these guys have, a lot of, seasoning under them. They've played quite a bit. When I think of Fleeks, I think of I kind of go back to the first year of Frost when Trey Neal, when they brought him here as a defensive back, that he had been at UCF, he was brought really to be kind of a culture guy and someone that could help, expedite the teaching and just with this new, kind of be a coach on the field. And if nothing else, if that's what Fleeks ends up being, I think that's a role that can be used here as we're going through a transition year.
Fleeks essentially he played with Garret McGuire, right? I mean, they are on the same
probably
team.
Roommates, yeah.
Well, and that's a good point, Dave. This is a group the the one being coached by Coach McGuire, not Coach McGee, as I kept calling him a couple weeks ago.
Fleeks and Kemp are the same age, practically.
Well, yeah. Well, isn't like Drake's basketball team older than half the NBA ones? I mean, that's happening all the time anymore. So, you just
that's right.
You just go with it. COVID years, who knows?
Older than 5 NBA teams. I think I going back because I was at Billy Kemp was the one I think I've heard him compared to like Torrey. a lot as far as like what he'd be able to contribute for this team.
Yeah, I can see that. A little different body type. Torrey's
Yeah.
taller, obviously, but Kemp's definitely more of a possession guy who potentially could catch a lot of passes, but maybe not have quite as many yards per catch.
Yeah. And when you think about the last 2 years, Torrey and then Palmer, those are examples where we've been able to have a transfer come in and be a significant player, not just not play a small role, but be the leading guy. And so again, with Kemp, it may not be the most yards per catch, and he may not even have the most yards, but I think he would be a top candidate going into the season to be the most receptions at least. And that is something that he did a lot of at Virginia. I know a guy on Twitter that we've been going back and forth a little bit, Who's Football, HOOS. And I've asked him about, so he's a big Virginia fan. I asked him about Billy Kemp and just, give me your evaluation. And that was the first thing he said. He's like, tough kid and great kid. And he's going to catch everything thrown at him. Doesn't have burner speed, but he has, all the other intangibles you want. And so, and then the other thing is the special team side of it. He's gonna, he can return punts, he can return kicks and actually do more than Santino Panico and just fall forward. So anything that a player can do like that at that position too, to start to change and flip the field. My goodness, that's something we haven't had in 5, 6, 7 years.
Yeah.
Probably since Des Moines personnel. So.
Yeah, that's a good point. Boomer, who would you got guys here that could be forming a 4x100 track team right here, right? I mean, like, who do you think's the fastest on this list?
That I don't know. We'd have to break out the GPS stats for it. That is something Rule's known for, is trying to find those, track speedster types and teach them the game of football. And, just looking at these columns, it's just interesting to see how young a lot of it is. I mean, there's so many, you have 3 seniors, 2 juniors, a couple of sophomores, and then everything else are redshirt freshmen and freshmen.
Yeah.
So, good opportunity to get some players in here and mold them into what you want and hopefully get a lot of production out of them. So, and, that just shows why you had to go out and get people like Fleeks and Kemp, because there just wasn't a whole lot of other experience to fall back on.
Yeah, and Garcia-Castaneda.
Yeah, and Castaneda coming back. And
that's a great
Marcus Washington.
Somebody said today that Betts is stronger and actually has improved in his speed. He's the fastest he's ever been. And I mean that's huge too, because that showed that he's like that commitment that Rule was talking about, right? Like we're coming in and working out and putting in the practice and the time.
Sure.
Sounds like he's doing that. So that's a positive, I think.
Yeah.
I'd
love to see the coaching staff really, with all the speed here, actually really push that competition, right? Like, let's say who is the fastest? I want them to actually try to really, really prove it, especially real football speed too. It should be interesting.
And I will say, Boomer, I think, made a really good point there. I'd probably I'm taking it for granted right now that Betts and Castaneda, IGC, are back. But look at this list right now and take those 2 guys off it. And that changes things completely. I mean, we needed that.
Yeah.
A little bit of age and a little bit of depth there. And if I have to throw out the wild card on that, to me, it is Betts, because he's somebody that obviously, we just assumed was done with Nebraska. And for him to come back, if he's anything potentially like he was 2 years ago, and if he's even better, this guy, he could be the best receiver. He could be the top reception, top, yardage guy, top touchdown. He could be the top everything if he's focused that way. And so a lot of talent for Coach McGuire to work with, and it'll be fun to watch.
Yeah, it's always amazing to see these different career trajectories, right? And everybody can ultimately maybe reach their destination in different ways. And the fact is that in my mind, recruiting wise, Zavier Betts is always tied to Xavier Watts. Watt, who came out of Nebraska, same time, went to Notre Dame. I think I saw him post. I mean, he's going to the NFL draft, I want to say, right? He was already a career done at Notre Dame, essentially. and Betts feels like he's just beginning, right? But it doesn't mean that Betts may not make it to the NFL as well. So it should be interesting.